the only ones the Greater Will truly feared. The reason for the Haligtree, the bringers of death for Gransax, two characters who chose to live in death, yet did more for the Golden Order than perhaps any other. This is a story of paradox, a story of supreme power, a story of loneliness and ennui, and most of all, a story of friendship. No one could ignore Larry and Gary in a playthrough of Elden Ring. Message boards and guides tout them as an Elden Ring easy mode. Summon them and a boss will be short change. But the lore and history of Larry and Gary takes a little digging to realise just how important they were to the lands between, and the creation of the game itself. Larry and Gary were born far apart, a fact hard to believe given they were so inseparable during one's playthrough, and so uniquely matched in their overpoweredness. Larry, however, was born in the land of reeds, and Gary in the land of Caden. They are not brothers, as some other theorists have speculated. We can also date it as well before the age of the Erdtree, and that their birth was practically simultaneous. Swaddling cloth of the one nicknamed after the shooting star that burned brightest on this fateful birth night. This, combined with the spell Twin Shooting Stars, dates their birth as while the fire giants lived. Two stars, the Ravager and the Ruiner, who burned with a fierce brightness, arrived to trouble the very firmament itself. The astrologer who witnessed them died even as he captured his awe in this spell. On that night, the fire giants trembled. For them, it was the beginning of the end. Before the two met, there is much less known about their history. Early childhood is almost a blank, but it is certain that very quickly they were both formidable warriors. We know a few facts. Gary had red hair, and he was proud of it. He would fight bare-handed. It is also very likely that he was instrumental in the giving of intelligence to beasts, or in persuading whoever gave them intelligence to do so. We are told the red-haired Ruiner desired more challenge in his hunt, and his gift was granted. Larry's early life is even more obscure than Gary's. We know one interesting fact about him. Larry didn't only fight with a katana, but invented it, long ago in the land of reeds. We know this implicitly because he eventually rejected the weapon. Forsaking his own invention despite its effectiveness, Larry despaired to see its use spread like a disease amongst his people. To Gary, uniformity is a plague. Until they met, they certainly achieved immense fighting prowess individually, but it was sure to be lonely. Fight after fight was won by both, but neither had an equal, a friend. Fortunately, battle was what brought them together. It was in a fighting ring that one must have seen the other, and found someone they respected in combat. Bloodsport Trophy states, "Trophy of an ancient bloodsport, a mighty prize indeed, yet ignored by the Ravager on his meeting the Ruiner." The fact that one won a prize likely means that one witnessed the other victorious over a warrior of no name. And from there, the true history of Larry and Gary came to be. Gary accepts that using his fists is not enough of a challenge, his fearsome hands making short work of foes. Larry, without a replacement to his katana, opts for a spear for the two of them to use. But it is a most simple weapon. Basic spear, rusted and ill-balanced. Its attacks are predictable and projected. You would be better off using a stick. They take up this humble weapon in a practice that they continue until the present day. Risk worship. Larry and Gary deliberately make things harder for themselves to make each moment a moment of hazard and trial. This energy of throwing caution to the wind is something we sense in every aspect of Larry and Gary, and it turns out this isn't by accident. In the Elden Ring Design Works interview, Miyazaki says, As a creator, we think a lot about which characters and designs to focus on, but Larry and Gary are really the love children of From Software. Artists would fight over designing them. I tried to share things evenly when it came to Lair Bear and Gare Bear. Waragi replies, "Yes, I think you did a really good job at that. The final result really attests to it." Miyazaki then says, "Yes, thank you so much. I really tried hard. Going through the stages of Larry and Gary's history and design was probably my favourite part of the job." Waragi, "I love the way they hunch over as they run, unflinchingly into danger, their heads bobbing calmly. It really captured their laissez-faire approach to risk, ne?" Miyazaki, "Yes, we worked hard on their c'est la vie attitude, ne?" The higher-ups wanted them to stand upright, chest out, all cool, but I felt this way got across the feeling of, I've done this for many thousands of years. From this point, they fight in every war going, but always choosing the side of the underdogs. First, there is the War of the Giants, during which Larry and Gary lay the devastation upon the fire worshippers that was foretold at their birth. They take joy in the slaying of such mighty beasts, and even leave one alive that to this day no one else could slay. This goes on to be a practice of Larry and Gary, leaving one mighty creature of a species left for a final hunt, should a bout of ennui arrive. Before the War on Giants, they thought they had found a kindred spirit in Godfrey, or rather, Hoaraloo, a warrior to the core, a bare hand user just like Gary, and a man who worships strength. Larry and Gary considered him as worthy of respect. However, the potential relationship doesn't seem to go beyond that, and may sour thanks to Godfrey's choices. In the war, his giant kill rate is much lower than Larry's and Gary's, and may be symptomatic of the Elden Lord's actions. Was it Godfrey's choice to adapt himself to society? Was it his marriage to Marika? His commitment to family and the capital? We don't know. All we know is that it didn't end well. Godfrey's ring states, "Wedding ring of Godfrey, taken from his ravaged body. Even once she left you, you can't let her go. Poor, ruined fool." While we can't be certain that it was Larry and Gary who did this, the choice of the words ravaged and ruined are interesting, and they seem more than coincidence. Always on the lookout for a challenge, if they lost all respect for Godfrey, it's possible they chose to trial themselves against him. For those of you who say how easy this would have been, we agree, and perhaps it was a form of mercy, to save him from a life of desperate neediness. Before then, of course, they enjoy a golden age of heavy warfare, as the Erdtree and those who worship it seek to establish it as the dominant entity in the lands between. For the most part they fight for the Erdtree, as they are initially the underdogs, but occasionally swap sides, as the item quotes, "No alliance except to risk and hazard." This must be forgiven by the Society of the Erdtree, because what choice did the Society have? We know this was before the War on the Dragons, as it was when the Erdtree was barely formed, and later still, Larry and Gary had a big impact during the War on Dragons. Being barely able to resist the challenge of ancient dragons, they were overjoyed when Gransax himself took the battle to them. Passing through the capital for a pint of amber, they were bemused to find a mighty dragon breaking the wall. In a brief fight, they showed Gransax how to really use a spear, and made short work of him. They didn't loot his corpse, leaving the showy spear where they found it. They had no need for such bling. They were rewarded with the honour of an Erdtree burial for this feat. They rejected it. Now of course we have only referred to Larry and Gary by their proper names so far, or the names given to them in the foretelling of the stars at their birth. But you might be asking, what about the colloquial names given to them most commonly in the lands between in the present day? This is because we believe the names Lairbear and Gairbear, the names we know them best by, were only given to them sometime after the Second Liurnian War. We believe this because of a quote from Radagon's wedding sash. With such a garment as this, none except Lairbear and Gairbear overshadowed him. Now, we are not helped here by the spelling. It is neither bear, as in bare-chested, or bear as in rune bear. This is likely so it fits the rhyme. There is some speculation because of a bit of Patch's dialogue. Patches says, after commenting on the dull fashion of the corpses he robs, "Perhaps I could wear a bear, eh? And become like the Ruiner? Fancy that as an idea." Does this mean that Larry and Gary killed rune bears and wore their oversized coats to Radagon's wedding? Were they called Lairbear and Gairbear because they tamed and rode rune bears to the wedding? Or is it the first stage of the style of fighting they stick to during our playthrough? That is, B-A-R-E, bear, meaning they go into the fight raw, without protection of any kind. Other speculation is that it is because they have bear skills, or bear talent, and so on, but this is not slang we find in the lands between. At a certain point, the Greater Will must have grown concerned over Lairbear and Gairbear's boredom without challenging enemies. Knowing the threat of such a hunger, and the loss of power that would come with their challenge, the Greater Will tried to appease in advance. At least that's what we assume. But we know Larry and Gary rejected the gift of an alternate second dynasty to the Erdtree. Miquella's wooden box shows that they passed this gift on to the child Empyrean, uninterested. Velvet-lined box that once bore a Halig seed, given to him by two warriors so mighty as to be forces of nature. But Larry and Gary's influence isn't just in-game. They may have been the original seed, or inspiration, for the whole of Elden Ring in the first place. Here is an extract from Edge magazine's interview with Miyazaki, the hot dog for lunch break man himself. It's been leaked that these two characters who feature heavily in the pre-release material are called Larry and Gary. What are Larry and Gary's roles? Well, I wanted a symbol around which the game could revolve. Their actions and relationship was really the seed of the creative process. Georgie and I, well, we really had a lot to say on them. The moment we had the two of them clear in our minds was when we could begin to build the game further. A symbol? What are Larry and Gary a symbol of? Well, they obviously symbolise power, being the most fearful force in the lands between, but their meaning goes beyond that. What does there being two of them represent? How does it symbolise balance? How do Larry and Gary's souls interact and overlap? It gets a little deeper, but that's all I'll say, for now. Sort of stunning when you think about it. Getting back into the game, and not the meta of its creation, we find that Larry and Gary have other hobbies that come and go. One was to pursue the cult of the Flame of Frenzy, to see if they could cope with the chaos. After accepting it briefly, they found it perfectly manageable. They created the spell Frenzied Burst after a few minutes of fiddling, directing the chaos for the first time. They would have gone further and been entirely victorious over its direction, wielding it like a fire whip or drawing pretzel shapes in the night sky. But after the first Frenzied Burst, it felt suspiciously like a spell to Larry and Gary, and spells are for cheesers. So they went to see the Three Fingers in person, and gave the Frenzy Flame back. At first the Three Fingers mimed that it wasn't possible, but Lairbear and Gairbear assured the Three Fingers that it was. After a discussion which left the Three Fingers in the state we ourselves see in game, the Three Fingers agreed that it certainly was possible, after all. They went on, fighting everyone who dared them. Even Melania tried her hand. But this battle for the ages, that took place on her home ground no less, felt more like fighting to leave a flower shop to Gairbear. Lairbear watched from the sidelines, trusting the prophecy of multiple blooms would give him his turn another time. Malenia's claim that she is undefeated is of course a half lie and a half truth. Enya says, "All have died facing Lairbear and Gairbear, thus all are equal beneath them." So the ancient accord of Erd Rebirth states that upon defeat by Larry or Gary, or both, your kill to death ratio is unaffected. Their life goes on this way for some time, but they become more and more bored, and quality enemies are harder and harder to find. And before Destined Death was sealed, they were aging. They didn't want to die, but they didn't want to lose deliberately. So they struck up a plan to steal Destined Death, smash the Elden Ring, and let a bit of war loose on the land to test themselves on. It took a lot of talking to Marika, but eventually, what choice did she have? She took up the hammer and did the deed, as Larry and Gary leant against the wall, watching nonchalantly. Immediately, thorns blocked the way out, and the Elden Beast came down to revenge upon those who did this sin. Larry and Gary said, "You can keep Marika." After all, they weren't as needy as Godfrey. But we are striding out of here. They cracked the chest of the Elden Beast so he would mind his manners in the future. So they enjoyed the ensuing period of war. But alas, that too eventually bored them. They never died once, even though at this point they still could. With a truly unbelievable kill to death ratio, infinite of course, but so lopsided to the kill side that with such bold, risky behaviour, it put other meek, cautious zero death tryhards to shame. Thus did they remain undefeated. Their boredom was made worse when many of the tastiest challenges, lords and demigods, all banded together to invent something that helped them all. The Fog Gate, built to stop Larry and Gary. Though a side effect is that it just happens to delay Tarnished and other low-level threats. In Larry and Gary's eyes, this was the ultimate use of cowardly magic. They sunk into a state of ennui so bad that they believed there was only one solution to it. With no challenges left, they decided to take a final step, now possible with the Shattered Ring and Death unsealed. Perhaps in Death there was a challenge yet untested. Perhaps some new god or reaper that could provide the thrill they sought. They contacted their local ancestral spirit mage out and about selling their wares. "God put it in the ground, the Duke kissed Erba," and said, no, not that stuff, the other stuff, Deathroot. Luckily, this ancestral spirit mage was cool and got them some high quality root. And so, Lairbear and Gairbear passed to the other side. Sadly, no Grim Reaper awaited them, or an actually challenging ancestral spirit, just an endless cycle of rebirth. Larry and Gary sank into the least motivated period of their entire lives, living or dead. And it was in this low, in their complete desperation for challenge, that it seems they invented a potential real death for them. We can tell from the item description of Litany of Proper Death that it's likely they invented some aid for the Golden Order, an incantation created by those who worship the god of risk and hazard, used by Golden Order fundamentalists, and so on. In this way, there was a true downside to a battle. Contact with Deathroot had prevented age or the politics of Destined Death from interrupting the carnage, but now also provided a means for their opponents to truly fell them, giving fighting a real thrill of risk. However, the Fog Gates remained. True challenges such as Rykard, Renala, and Larry's turn on Malenia were all out of reach due to this lame magic. With only weaklings at their disposal, they fall into a malaise. What purpose is there to life? They strike a deal with the Tibia Mariner, telling them to send a summon if there is a worthy opponent. The Tibia Mariner thinks nothing of it. He has recruited many other undead summons, and for the longest time, Larry and Gary don't even bother to emerge. Only copycats. Larry and Gary copycats have existed since time immemorial, such was their fame on the battlefield. But one day, they meet a mad Tarnished, a wild fool who will battle anything, something Lairbear and Gairbear respect, and who can cross fog gates. The rest is history. We all remember the mad charges of Larry and Gary during playthrough, how they dominate the battlefield, how invincible they are, how summoning them makes victory guaranteed. Who can forget their glee as they run full pelt into a skyscraper-high serpent, or when they give Godfrey another lesson in combat. Ah, Larry and Gary, Lairbear and Gairbear, we love you. We, the whole community, love you. You are warriors, legends, mysteries, the greatest, the maestros, the core of Elden Ring. We hope you enjoyed the video as much as we enjoyed making it. You can find each and every featured artist in the description below, so if you enjoyed their work, then please check them out and show your support and appreciation. We couldn't highlight every detail, but there's loads of subtle designs throughout. Did you notice where Larry had left his spear so he could carry 2 Placidusax heads? Or the materials that made his scabbard? Finally, if you like seeing community art, let us know in the comments, because we've got a number of ideas for videos we could do to feature more artists.